So what we're going to go over here is how to actually get your levels into a timeline. Now, one thing that I want to get out of the way very quickly is that if your piece takes place in just one single location, you will not need to be doing this whole level visibility track thing. You still might be wanting to have your shots as sort of master sequences where you can cut sort of in and out of your setups within the overall location, but you definitely will not need to be doing level visibility. Now, since my piece takes place over the course of lots of different environments here, as you can see, I have to use level visibility to shuffle in between those levels inside of the timeline. The way that I'm doing this, as you can see here, I have all the different locations, right, including my grasslands. Everything is here. The way that I'm doing that is I've created a master edit level. And inside of that level, I've opened up under window, I've opened up the levels tab. And inside of that levels tab, I've added every other level that I have a scene set in. So this is almost like the single master source right here, this master edit level, where all of these other levels are stored using level streaming. And now if I right click on any one of these, you can see that my streaming method is always set to blueprint. Okay, so you want to make sure that is always there. How do you get a level inside of your master level? It's as simple as going to your maps folder and then just dragging and dropping one in. For example, for the grasslands, if I wanted to put that in there, the gray boxed version, I could just drag and drop it. And you'll see that if I toggle it on and off, I'll actually see it exist along with the other levels, but I don't need that for this. So I'm actually going to remove it. Now, let's go back to our world outliner. You'll notice that inside of my world outliner, I have all the folders that I have set here for any given level that I'm actually on. So this is going to change. For example, if I open up characters here, the character folder, and I'm in my sequence master level for the orbit 2 level, you'll notice that I just have these two blueprints in there. But if I go all the way over to coastal or volcanic, you'll notice that it's populated differently. These are going to update depending where you are on your timeline. So what I like about this is actually another easy way to edit components inside of your scene without having to go into the levels themselves. But how do we actually set this up? Let's get into that next. So in our master sequence here, like I said, we have all of our different levels represented. These are individual UMap files. These are not, this whole film does not take place in the same level. There's multiple levels loaded. Now, the way that I'm making this work is I've added, by using a plus track, level visibility tracks. I've added 2 of them. I've added 1 visibility track for levels that are visible, and I've added 1 for levels that are hidden. And the way that I go in and change this is I'll bring in my master shots here. So for this one, this is sequence master bridge cryo that exists right here. So inside of that, if I double click, this is what's great about these master edit and sub edit clips here, is I can go in and I can see my shots. So if I need to make any sort of adjustments, I can do that here by popping into these shots as well. So we have the whole hierarchy of how this is set up here. I would definitely recommend, if you have not taken the online learning courses about Sequencer, you do that if this seems a little bit disfamiliar. Now, if I go back to my master, though, what I need to do, since in my levels tab, all of my levels are loaded, or hidden at once, is I need to make sure that I have a level visibility track where bridge is visible. So that's all of this material right here. So if I go right click here onto properties, I can actually, under level visibility, add elements to an array. I only want 1 visible at a time, so I've just added 1, and I've named it case sensitive. This is very important, what this level is, so it's visible. All right, so this is completely visible. Now, one more caveat here. If you are not rendering all at once out of Sequencer and you're going to go to another NLE, you do not need to do this. You can just render out. You can render out your film piecemeal, then put it together in whatever program you like. I'm doing it this way with these level visibility tracks, the same way that I might be doing it if I had an in-game cutscene that was not pre-rendered, but also just because I want to make this sort of point that I can make a movie completely inside of the engine without going anywhere else. So I'm actually going to be doing all my edits in here. So Same thing for this level visibility track. I've created another one. I've right-clicked under properties. I've set the visibility to hidden, and I've filled the array out with all the other levels. All right. So this can get a little bit tricky. You're just going to have to keep track of what you have hidden and what you have visible. But quite frankly, out of the layers of complexity this could potentially have, this is not that difficult, all things considered. You just need to sort of ride these. And of course, these edits will correspond with your shot cuts. There's the cuts in your shot track here. So for instance, if I'm going through this from sequence, let's see which one this is. This is sequence orbit 3, or master orbit, into sequence master volcanic, right? I have a cut point here on my level visibility track. By the way, you can do that anywhere just by right clicking, going to edit, and clicking on split. I just want to make sure that these are lined up, because that's really the whole point. When I cut into the new level, I want to make sure that everything else is not visible. And I'll be doing that for this entire sequence. So this course isn't necessarily about teaching you how to edit. I'm just trying to get you to understand the functionality of the edit inside of the engine completely using these multiple different levels. So looking through here, one thing that you'll notice that I've added in the master edit level inside of our master edit sequence is our audio mix. So I just want to go through a couple examples of dropping some audio in. Once again, this is not a course about creating the audio for your film. I'm just going to be using some very simple tracks here that I have access to that are rights-free, Creative Commons tracks, and I'm going to sort of drop them in here. So the first thing that I have, and I've gone in and I've added an audio track, is the music that's going to run under the whole piece. And this is a track from a royalty-free website called Incompetech.com, and this is one of the tracks from that site. What I'd like to also do, though, is add some sound effects into this piece. This is a more moody, atmospheric piece. This is sort of like, let's say, the prologue for a much larger story where there's about to be a lot of conflict and craziness, but we're sort of setting up the world. We're introducing ourselves to that little drone character, the native flora and fauna in this planet. But what I'd like to do is actually just fill this out a little bit with sound, so it's not just music and to end. Now, I am going to keep to a sort of nerdy rule here where I'm not going to put any sound effects in space. All right, so we're just going to have the music carry us while we're in outer space. But, at the beginning here, as we fade up into the bridge, there might be some nice room tone that I could put in here that's sort of like a little bit of a hum. So we get a sense that the interior of this space is alive. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add one more audio track, and I'm going to rename this to SFX, or sound effects. And what I can do is I can just drag and drop or select through the menu some sounds that I would like to put in here. So let me save and go into my content browser. And I do have a folder called SFX, and what I'm going to actually do, let's move the content browser over here so I can access these a little bit simpler. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I have an audio track here. Let's type in ambient sound. There we go. And I have it in here. And you'll notice if you drag a soundtrack out, this is kind of cool, it will automatically loop it for you. So I'm just going to stretch it out to my first cut point here as we go out into space. So now if I play it, I have a nice drone underneath. So what I can also do if I'd like is under here, I can even keyframe the volume to fade up. So I added a key back there. I add another key here and set this to 0. So it's slowly going to fade up and exist within our scene. So for those of you familiar with other editing systems, this is going to be relatively similar, if not exactly similar to your workflow that you'd be doing there. The one thing that's a little bit different, unless you're used to more nested editing is how we have our shots track set up here, where, essentially we have the master, then inside of that we have our individual setups, if you will, or our shots. So if I go into bridge 1 and I want to change something here, I have to click all the way through this to actually get into that to change any of these variables that I've keyframed. But then I can always pop back to the master edit. Same thing here. If I'd like to change something about this bridge 2 shot, maybe I want to change when the actual rack focus happens. I can do that really easily out here. So now that this is all set up, I want to go through and make sure I don't have any errors. So one thing that I've noticed every now and then, because this takes a little bit of time to get set up, and you might forget things, I definitely do. I always sort of do a last minute check here at my frames per second setting. So you'll notice that I have an error, and basically what this is going to say is that somewhere in here, one of my sequences is not set to 24. So if I click on that, I see that I'm 24 here. Let's go back in here and see if we have the issue. Let's go over to bridge 3. I think this was our problem. We still have an issue here. It's bridge 05. So if I hover over this, you'll see that I have a mismatch. Bridge 05 is at 30 frames per second. So we're going to have to go all the way out here. Bridge 05, I believe, is our last shot. There we go. And that's set to 30. So let's bring it back down to 24 frames per second. And we shouldn't have any issues now in our master edit. So once again, what are the benefits of this workflow? Well, first of all, the music, the audio tracks, everything like that is handled after the fact. The mild technicality that's going to be different from any other program you've ever used, most likely, is this idea of the level of visibility to cut between your different scenes. But that's why we're using real-time rendering. But once again, I love this because if I want to go in and change any single thing here, like even just the starting rotation of this ship, I can just jump into my sequence. Let's go to the beginning here. I can get my ship, this colony ship, and let's say I want it to start like that. I can do it. Then I can head back out. And there we go. The change is committed. So this master sequence workflow, one more time just to explain it, is I have a master sequence that's actually put together. This is kind of in reverse, but this is why we talk about wanting to pre-visualize or really understand the story we're trying to tell on a visual level before we even get started, is I make all my master sequences for my individual setups. It's almost like doing pre-edits of each individual scene, and then I drop them in this master edit, or I can then start cutting them however I want. And then the only technical note that I need to be aware of is my level visibility tracks down here. That way I can seamlessly cut between levels real time inside of Unreal Engine. Now, the benefit, once again, is if I wanted this piece to exist as a buildable interactive file, it can. It does not have to solely be a pre-rendered movie file. This can exist in a way that actually has interactivity and allows the user to sort of navigate this world in real time, which is what I'm going to show off with a little bit of the interactive blueprints that I've built for this movie. Oh, and there we have it. Our ominous sort of button to this little short is we have something menacing lurking in the underbrush there, right as our cryo capsules all turn on as they prepare to disembark on this new land. Well, that's really it for showing Sequencer in the context of making this film. Like I said, if some of this feels a little bit or very unfamiliar to you, I would strongly suggest going through the Sequencer workflow so you'll understand on a more basic level how this was put together. But for this specific short, this is how everything has come together to allow it to run real time, level to level, whether I'm rendering it out as a single movie file using Unreal as the program that delivers my final frame, or if I'm creating an interactive version that's deployed as an EXE that can be basically manipulated or used for interactivity by the user.